topics that make your blood boil, the point of view that plugs you in, the perspective we all need. Danielle Smith on 770 CHQR. Join the conversation. Toll free 1-800-563-7770. Call or text 403-974-8255. Danielle Smith on 770 CHQR.
Brought to you by the Popowich Carmeli Advisory Group, CIBC Wood Gundy.
All right, guys, let's end on something we can at least all agree on, that Scotch is good. Well, I can't call it that. Malt whiskey is delicious. And so we're going to be talking with somebody who I find really amazing. One thing I should say, just to transition from our last topic, this is the kind of business that when they're making a decision, do I locate in Calgary or do I locate somewhere else, would look at what your business property taxes are and probably say, not going to do it. As it happens, they did end up starting up in Turner Valley. I'm talking about the Eau Claire Distillery. And what an amazing success story to start up when they did, when Alberta was in the doldrums that as it has been from an economic point of view, and to be winning award after award and doing some really innovative, interesting things. I just think that this is something to celebrate. So that's what we're doing today. We got David Farran, who is president and founder of Eau Claire Distillery, in studio today. Thank you for joining us, David.
Well, thanks for having me.
We better remind people about why it is today, or this period of time is so momentous, is because you're on the second batch of your incredible malt whiskey.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you're doing a single malt whiskey, it is a long game. So, you have to have it in the barrel for 3 years. But it really starts to get its complexity and flavor, 5, 8, 12 years out. So to have our second batch out of 3 years is pretty exciting for us.
So guys, I promise you that they did more this year than there was available last year. And I will tell you the places in Calgary that you will be able to get it, although I am already being forewarned that there were lineups.
There were lineups this morning. Yeah, it was outside a lot of liquor stores. We heard tales of lineups, and people were phoning, trying to find out where it was. So yeah, it was a bit of a frenzy, but very exciting. What
was the reaction on the first release? Because it is a pretty small world, and I think it's a very competitive one as well. Did you get some recognition for your first batch?
We did. I mean, one thing that when you're starting something in such an old staid industry, I mean, it really is identified as Scotch in Scotland. Some of these distilleries are 300 years. So when an upstart starts and comes into it, we kind of expect that the aficionados are going to, turn their noses away from what we've produced. But we had great response. I mean, it's really been gratifying, and I think it'll only get better from here. These are like teasers for the future. What
is it that you do differently? I mean, I one of the things, if you guys haven't been out there, they have a wonderful tour that you can go on so that you can see the process, and then a tasting room where you're able to try different products as along with a few little nibblies. But you find out a lot about how it is they do this, and you're really like a craft distillery.
We are. I mean, we're a batch producer. So, we're not trying to make these huge quantities that we're, uniformity and everything should be the same. So each year will be slightly different, reflective of the climate, the grain, what we call the terroir, which you're used to in wine. All of those will have effects on each batch. And then as we get, older, we mix in slightly older ones. I mean, then this year, we've got some 4-year-old hidden in there. And so it changes, but it's still part of the same family. I mean, some people, and I'd be interested to see your reaction today, a lot of people can't tell the difference between batch 1 and batch 2.
There's a challenge. Okay, so Tony King is the in-house Scotch expert, so we may have to get his refined palate to tell you the difference between the two. What we're going to do here, I'll get you to pour some of the old one while I'm just telling our audience about what we're doing, what we're setting up here. If you want to go on to Facebook Live, you can have a look at it there, and you'll be able to see what these bottles look like. So if you're lucky enough to get into one of the stores before they sell out, then you'll be able to see what it is they look like. And then we'll also let you know in a few minutes where you'd be able to get them. So David has just poured for me last year's batch. Yeah. I've already had some of this, I must say, because we bought a bottle last year. So what should I be looking for? What is the proper way to taste a Scotch? Is it like when you're doing wine tasting? Do you smell the bouquet and look at how
absolutely. I mean, and you can get a lot of the sense of what the spirit is by having that that smell of that sniff early in the beginning. And you know, you can sort of inhale it deeply, and you'll get as much out of the smell as you will out of the actual flavor when you taste it.
What should I be smelling in here? What is unique about creating this in Alberta that would be different from some of the historic scotches?
Well, I think what's neat about Alberta is that we are the biggest barley producer in the world, and we're well respected all around the world for it. So when you have a scotch, typically you're actually drinking Alberta barley.
That's not, you know, I went to a distillery tour when I was in Ireland, and so Irish whiskey, very much the same thing, that they're bringing
it in from Canada and from Alberta. So it's only right that we should have the first
amazing you're not allowed to call it a scotch, because essentially you're like the originals, your ingredients go into some of the original historic scotch production.
That's right. But you know, it does have its own characteristics being from Alberta as well. I mean, the way that we do it, I think is important. And we have this great climate, which in some ways is better than what comes from Scotland. So if you think of Scottish climate, it's rainy and dank and cold pretty much year round, always at 8 degrees Celsius. Whereas we have this wonderful, these Chinooks, and it gets really hot in the summer and really cool in the winter. So when it's hot, those barrels just suck that flavor out of the wood. And when it's cold, it oxygenates, and it just, creates all of that flavor and smoothness.
And so we're going to have probably, when you start getting into your older scotches, once they've had more chance to age, they're going to be incredibly flavorful.
They are. I think so, yeah.
Do you know what I noticed about this? Because I do like a smoky scotch. What I notice is this is quite light.
Yeah. So we don't peat it. That's number one, because we don't really think that that's part of Alberta. Peat is part of, the landscape of Scotland. So what we've tried to make is something that's really approachable. It's something that anybody can enjoy and say, wow, I'm not a Scotch drinker, but that's really good.
I could definitely have a full ounce of that. Okay, I'm going to ask David to then pour the second one to see if I've got a refined enough palate that I would be able to tell the difference between the two. Again, you can check these out on Facebook Live if you want to see what the bottles look like. I should tell you, if you're listening from outside Calgary, they do have some product in Banff, Black Diamond, Bragg Creek, Canmore, Cochrane. They do have some up in Edmonton as well for our Edmonton friends. Okotoks, Red Deer, St. Albert, and Turner Valley. I know I'm part of their cask club, so I know that they've sent an email out on this, and I'll tell you Calgarians as well, where you'll be able to get them very shortly. Okay, so which is my new one?
I think it's this one.
That one is the new one. They look, see, this is just it. They don't really look that different. I kind of expected maybe it to be darker because of what you were talking about, that dynamic of the heating and the cooling, drawing out more flavor. I guess I figured that it would get sort of a richer tone, but they look the same to me.
Yeah, and actually the color comes out pretty early when it's put away in the barrel, so that doesn't change that much. It will get darker, over many years, but it's pretty much exactly the same amber color as before.
And is there, are you using different types of casks as well? Are there going to be different wood flavors?
That's part of the recipe. So it's not, there's so many places that the flavor comes out in the recipe that our distillers are doing. One of those things is the barrels, and the barrels are in Oloroso sherry casks. Some of these casks are 100 years old that we've brought over from Spain. We use new European oak, which gives it kind of that vanilla flavor and that really interesting smoothness. And then we use bourbon barrels. And bourbon barrels are what most whiskey is done in. So it's the Americans have a rule that you can only use it once for 2 years and you must discard it. So the Scots, being Scottish, picked that up years ago and said, oh God, they're throwing away all these great barrels. So most Scotch is now made in bourbon, but we use a lot of different types of barrels.
Only thing I could notice that was different is it felt like I was tasting it in a different part of my tongue. I felt like I was tasting it further back in my mouth, and it just that's the only thing I can identify. And I don't know if what it would be that I would be tasting that would be different that way. Well,
and your palate is it's amazing how it quickly adjusts. So the first taste is always different from the second taste. So you're almost kind of, it's not a fair contest. What a lot of people will do, put a little drop of water to just kind of let that spirit come out of.
What does water do? Because I'm probably a heathen because I just drink my meat. People are always surprised when I do have spirits that I don't like to put any in it. But what is it that the water is supposed to be doing?
You just put a drop, and it just releases a lot of the volatiles in the spirit, and it's a chemical reaction, and of which would be a whole other discussion about how it works. But it works for all spirits. So if you had a gin or a vodka, all of those, just a little bit of it will let it relax.
Okay, now I know that this is impossible out there, that the loved one in your life coming up on Christmas might not be a Scotch drinker. It amazes me that could possibly be the case, but it may be the case. And so good news for you, they have other product lines as well. So why don't we just take a quick pause? I will probably try to find a way to post this list on my Twitter feed as well so that you can have it. And then I'll tell you where you can get this delicious second batch of their single malt whiskey in Calgary, and then we'll talk about some of the other products. Stay with us. We are talking with our guest, David Farran, who's president and founder of Eau Claire Distillery. We'll be right back on 770 CHQR. Just in our final minutes here, if you are not a Scotch or a malt whiskey drinker, they do have other product lines. I've got a couple of comments asking, is your guest thinking of going into cannabis-infused products, as so many other drinks are?
No, I think we're going to stick to our knitting, but I don't think that's actually permitted in the regulations, where you can't mix THC and alcohol.
That makes sense, actually. They're doing quite a bit of commercials suggesting that you don't mix the two. Another person saying, add muskeg water. That's Albertan.
Well, I don't know if the algae taste would really complement it, but it might be an idea.
For a future one. I've got somebody saying, I got it. Did the tour, joined the Cask Club and ordered. The tour was terrific. The Scotch is divine. And then I've got this person saying, the Parlour Gin is the best gin I've ever drank. And that's from a gin snob. Now, you have another product here. It is not the Parlour Gin, but it's a Christmas gin, which is interesting to me because my husband's a gin drinker, but he's more of a summer gin and tonic kind of gin drinker. I always think of gin as a summer drink. Why should I be thinking of this one as a winter drink?
Well, as you might know, that Christmas has some association with having parties and drinking. So,
there's that.
Gin, if you're a gin lover, it's a great time to do that. Our Christmas gin is a really fun take on Christmas, is that what we decided to do, and our distiller, Caitlin Quinn, who's from Scotland, had this idea that we could use all of the wise men gifts as part of our botanicals. So we put in frankincense and myrrh, which are very unique tasting botanicals. But we didn't put in gold because I nixed it. It was a little too expensive.
Maybe a little bit of gold leaf or something on the label.
So you have to imagine there is actually. So, but it is a really unique gin and a great flavor. So very popular.
Well, let's talk too though about the successes that you've had, because you have had beyond the malt whiskey success some recognition for your gins as well. Yeah.
So our parlor gin, as the listener points out, is becoming very well known. It's now ranked in the top 3 gins in the world. And I can tell you it's a very competitive sector. Even in London, which is like the coal to Newcastle, where gin comes from, we're ranked in the top 3 there as well. So that has created this incredible thirst for distribution, and we're now selling parlor gin throughout the U.S. And it's just been an amazing kind of and very exciting couple of years. And
I think I've tried your prickly pear vodka as well. Yep. Am I got that right?
Yep, that's also won a whole raft of awards all around the world, and it is a very unique product. It's the first time that anybody's ever distilled prickly pear cactus, which grows in the southeast part of the dry parts of the province. But it's like no taste you'll ever have. I mean, it's almost indescribable, but it is so unique and fantastic. So it's got a real following.
Were you nervous starting up when you did that? Post global economic turmoil with 2008, and then the other problems in Alberta. Were you worried that you were going to have some problems?
Well, it wasn't a great time to start. I mean, that's for sure. Because when we actually did all of our equipment and we ordered, Alberta was in a frenzy. I mean, it still hadn't quite, the recession hadn't kicked in, so everything was at twice the price, and the exchange rates were awful, and so it was an interesting way to start. But you know what? It made us stronger. I mean, we weren't sort of addicted to easy money. We had to work for everything that we've done, and I think that's made us better.
No kidding. Okay, guys, if you want to take part and understand and know about the new offerings before anybody else does, you should go onto their website and also sign up for their Cask Club. Now, the reason we're doing this today is because today is the day that this limited edition malt whiskey becomes available in liquor stores. I'm going to list a bunch of them off here for you in Calgary, because today is probably the day you'd have to go get them because they are going to sell out. Bin 905, Bricks Wine Company, Calgary Farmers Market, Cellar Wine Store, Co-op Liquor Tasting Centers and World of Whiskey, Craft Cellars, Crowfoot, the main Aspen All-Store locations only, Highlander, Kensington Wine Market, Liquor Store in Brentwood, Mount Royal, Signal Hill, also Rocky Mountain Wine, Spirits Beer, Safeway Liquor, Town Square, Nolan Hill, Shaughnessy, South Trail, also Sobeys Liquor, Tuscany, Royal Oak, Cranston, Sundance Wine Market, Vine Arts, Willow Park, and Wine and Beyond Sage Hill. Ladies, I'm just telling you, if you're thinking of getting that special something for your guy at Christmas time, he will be delighted if you make the effort to try to go out and get this today. And it's just such a pleasure talking to a successful entrepreneur. I appreciate you sharing your story with us.
Well, thanks for having us.
All right. That was David Farran, president and founder of Eau Claire Distillery. Let's end on a positive note today, my friends. We're going to hand it off to Rob Breckenridge in afternoons, and news is next on 770 CHQR.